Hey everybody, welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast, the #1 resource for learning what it means to have a healed heart, connect more deeply with Jesus, and experience true and lasting transformation in your life. I'm one of your hosts, Kathy Little.
And I'm your other host, Melinda Wilson. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss the fresh content we're continuing to release. And while you're at it, we greatly appreciate your help in getting the word out by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a quick review. You can also keep up with us by following our social media by searching face-to-faceministries.org on Facebook. That's no spaces, no numbers, and no caps. And on Instagram at face-to-face-min, and that's all one word.
We want to invite you to join us in our free face-to-face heart healing network and in our premium network. Be part of a growing community of people just like you who are wanting to dive deeper into what it means to access the full benefits package of the cross and learning how to help others do the same.
Our team also offers one-on-one ministry sessions that can be done virtually, and you can also learn how to help others connect with Jesus and find healing in their lives through training we offer in the ministry model we use. And for more information about all of the resources, trainings, and events that we offer, visit face-to-faceministries.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter.
All right, so let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. Here we go.
Episode 90. I've been wanting
to sing it, but she's having to stand like 8 feet away from the mic because it's picking
My resonant voice is so loud.
So crazy.
I literally just stood 8 feet away from the mic for that.
Literally. Hey, welcome back. We're excited about our guest today.
Yay!
This one's kind of a big deal, and we love him.
He makes me want to sing.
Oh,
that's why
it.
I'm doing it.
That's it.
I can't help it.
Yes.
There needs to be a drum roll now. Who in the heck?
Wait a minute. Before
we can't talk about him
Before we talk about who we have on here, just want to make sure you guys know to visit our website, be on our newsletter, because we have some Emmanuel Approach trainings coming up. Next weekend, we're going to be in Medford, Oregon. It's 29 and 30 of January. We're going to be doing that. And then a practicum in Sisters, Oregon, coming up the end of February. And we're also having conversations about bringing it to the East Coast, to the Hampton Roads, Virginia Beach area, and also to South Carolina, Columbia area. So listen, if y'all want to bring us, let us know, because we're happy to travel.
We are. Be a part. Come and join us being a part of an army of heart healers with healed hearts. If the world needed it anytime, it is now.
It is definitely now. And we're very happy to be able to bring this to you. And it's just practical and effective and simple, that these tools can be caught very quickly in a couple of days. And they're really powerful to help people connect with Jesus. They're backed by brain science. So
we've got some reviews on our website.
Added
short video about 8 people that came to our training last year that were just sharing their experience with it. So check that out. So don't just believe us, believe those that have been a part of it.
Yeah. And without any delay here, we are so thrilled to be bringing back our very dear friend. And I mean that. This man, in his presence, you feel like you're like the only thing in his world, because he knows how to live in the present. And man, that is so important, especially during times that are uncertain. But we are so thrilled to have the author of The Shack, Paul Young, back with us again. So we're going to share that with you. Yeah, it's been a bit.
About a year and a half. If you haven't read the book or at least seen the movie, please go. You know what? The book and the movie are both a healing journey. I've watched it about 4 times, and the more I study and teach in the Emmanuel Approach, I watch The Shack and say, this is the Emmanuel Approach being exhibited over and over again. And I actually shared that with Paul in the interview, and he totally agreed, because Mac, the main character of the story, is going through so much pain, sees where God was with him in his pain along all these different stops in his journey, and it's incredibly powerful. And so it really brings healing to life.
Yeah.
Especially I love the book. There's so much about the book that's so rich, but the movie brings it to life in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, so if you want to catch our conversation with him from before, you'll have to dial back a little bit into the episodes. We did 2 episodes with him, and we talked more about the book there. This conversation was not about the book, but more about just life and being present and what's going on and how do we move forward and how do we love in the midst of all of that. And Paul is just always an amazing treat just to be with him, and the conversation is always very deep. And so we are happy to bring him back and let you guys in on our conversation with Paul Young. What fun to be back with our friend Paul Young, author of The Shack and several other books. And man, it has been a while since we have chatted, but it's like old friends. It's like,
I gotta say, just looking at your face, Paul, makes me smile. And if you guys could see him, you guys need to go check out a YouTube video or something, because he just carries radiance. So
yeah, that's the thing about our new platform that we're using for recording virtual sessions is it does not yet record video, or we would share this one, but at least we're going to get some audio. And we've already just been chatting a little bit before we hit record about some things that, I don't know, some really good topics here coming up. And when you got Paul Young in front of you, it's going to happen.
So just say hi. Say hi. We got to shut up and let him talk.
Hi. I'm so glad to find out that we're not on video, because I have a really itchy nose, and I just didn't want to do anything about it for about an hour. So.
You're totally fine.
Oh, so good to be with you. You guys are lights in this cosmos. So
well, we're excited to have you back, and thanks for joining us again. And I think we usually have some sort of an agenda or a target, and with you, we know it's just going to manifest itself.
You can have one, but who knows?
Yeah, I know.
I said that. She was like, "We should have a focus." I'm like,
"It's
Paul."
It's Paul.
There are so many. I think we could grab onto one and hang out there for a while, and then there's another star that we could go jump to and hang out on that one for a while. And
there's been times where I thought I knew what I was doing. But I was almost always wrong. A lot of us thought that our calendars is what gave us a sense of control, and they got obliterated this year.
That's true.
We found out the truth. We were never in control to begin with.
Oh, man, isn't that true?
What day is it? Tuesday? No, it's Color Day. Is that a new day?
Oh,
yes, it is.
You know what? It's Tuesday, and my Aunt Gladys turns 100 years old today.
Oh, wow. Is today Tuesday or Monday?
I was kidding. It's
Monday.
It's Tulur Day. See, we don't even know.
We don't even know.
So happy birthday, Aunt Gladys. 100. That's an incredible milestone.
This is my dad's oldest sister, and so she was born in 1920. And and she has seen a lot of things. She's a writer too. She writes histories for communities up and down the West Coast, and mostly British Columbia. So she's a fantastic human being. I just love her.
That's awesome. Well, happy birthday! Wow.
Kind of ticked off that she was like 94 when she tripped and fell, and then she couldn't drive anymore. It really ticked her off.
Oh. Couldn't drive anymore at 94. Oh dear.
We had a guy here locally that just passed his driver's test, and he's 104.
No way. Guess there's no age limit. It's just
man.
The ability. If the ability is still there.
Yep.
Wow.
You may not remember where you're going, but
but you can drive a straight line, or you can get there.
Oh man. Well, Paul, we are really glad to see you, and what a wonderful friendship has developed since we first met you, and I wish we could be in each other's lives a little bit. It would be great. Of course, everybody wishes they could be in each other's lives a little more right now.
Except a lot of people, it's not the ones that they're actually with.
Oh, that's true. This is very true.
It's been quite a year to expose the authenticity of relationship.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, Paul, do you remember what you said to us before we pressed record? Because you're like that. You say these just these zingers, punchline, and it's like, can we linger on that? And so can you just repeat what you said?
That 2020 has been the year of exposure. That is, that the unexposed is the unhealed. And then you said, Go ahead.
Well, I said that. Yeah, thanks. Okay, you can interview me. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm all for that.
I just said that at the beginning of this, before everything really blew up, I think I made a Facebook Live, or so, I don't know, maybe I was just talking to myself, but I said, this is going to bring out the best in people, and it's going to bring out the worst in people. And we're going to see not see what we're made of, but yeah, what is in there that is going to, like you're saying, be exposed. And I think that we either are going to see, oh my gosh, there is a lot of unhealed stuff in me. What am I going to do with it? Will I deal with it, or will I continue to suppress it? Will I continue to deny my heart? And I think that that's a big part of it, is that when we're not willing to face the unhealed places, we're actually denying parts of our heart. We're not living fully connected to all of our heart. And that means we're not living wholehearted, and we're not living the way that Jesus created us to live, out of a whole heart. But I know it's really scary to some people. So I feel like even you saying that, Paul, that word exposure terrifies some people, I think.
Right. It terrifies anybody who wants to be in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it exposes the masks that we've worn to cover up our hurt. COVID doesn't cause the essential parts of damage, right? It's not why everybody's so ticked off this year or afraid this year. It's what it's done is it's exposed where we've been hiding, or what we've been hiding. And because it's given us time, and it's pushed us into face-to-face relationships. And we don't have the security blankets that normally we do. A lot of us are addicted to being busy. Right?
Oh man, that's true.
And suddenly you don't have some of those options. Or like I said before, a lot of us are also addicted to a calendar because it gives us a sense of control. And then suddenly it's not there. And you find out we've never actually been in control. We've just assumed it.
It's an illusion.
But exposure works both ways, right? It exposes that which is actually good and true and right and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has happened this year. You've seen the good and right and true and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then it exposes what needs to be addressed or what needs to be healed. And at that point, you can either freak out and make some external thing the problem, or you can begin to go like, oh, okay.
Right.
I need to do some work here.
Yes. Well, isn't it that I think the human experience, or just human tendency, is to always look outwardly and the blame, like I've got to blame something else or someone else for why I'm behaving like this, why I'm feeling like, oh, you made me feel angry, or that thing, and we're used to that though. I think that's the human condition for so many of us, and not looking inward. And the thing is though, Paul, is that I've been on my own journey too this year, is that looking inward is where I find Christ. I mean, the more I look inward, the deeper I dive into my own heart, I feel like the deeper I'm going to find Jesus, because he's in me, I'm in him, the Holy of Holies is within me. And so it doesn't have to be terrifying. It actually can be full of light. If I'm following this path to my own heart, I'm actually looking at Jesus. I'm also pursuing him as I pursue my own heart. And if we can get that, and so that it's not like, oh, I got to find Jesus way out there, and I have to actually look in here. And people don't take time to be with our own heart. We just don't. We don't listen to our hearts, be quiet enough to actually feel my heart. Our conversation with Jonathan, I was telling him that I've been doing a lot more. I've never done it before, meditation, and actually just sitting still and quiet with my heart and talking to my heart, being with it, allowing to give a voice to my heart. And that's where I find the source of love and the source of all things healing, Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so it's been for me a time to, do this journey of discovery in my own heart. And
so why do you think people don't want to do that?
I'm supposed to be asking you. No, I think that I think that they do because they don't know what's there.
Yeah,
I think
fear of
it's the
what
fear
they're
of
going
the
to find.
unknown. I think that it's scary if they find, oh my gosh, this anger and rage is in me. What if I open that door and I won't be able to stop it? Or if I open a door to pain, I won't be able to stop the pain, and I'll be overwhelmed with my own pain.
Yeah. Could it be too that they actually think they already know what's in there?
Mm.
Yeah.
It's one thing to not know what's in there, but a lot of us assume we already know what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that because we're shame and fear based. So we don't want to go there and find out that we were right, especially if we're shame based.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that's a reason that people don't do the work. But I think fear and shame are the dominant issues here, and they're dominant for all of us. Fear is the enemy that we need not love, as someone said recently. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about that. I think that's a really good thing to talk about.
Let's go.
So,
yes.
So I've got a friend named Jamie Winship, and Jamie has worked in. He worked for the police for years, and then was recruited into the CIA, and he worked with the CIA for years, and from a whole different perspective than a lot of people. He wanted to be a police officer like this woman that he had run into when he was a teenager, and he'd had an accident, ended up in the hospital, and he describes her as in a hospital full of doctors and nurses, she was a healer. And he really gave her a hard time, and because he was this young punk kid, but he left there going like, I want to be a police officer like she is a healer, right? And he didn't know what that meant, and it meant having a constant, ongoing encounter in his relationship with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and everything that he did, moment by moment, and it's a wild, crazy story. I was listening to him recently. He was doing a little online conference thing, and he was talking about a study that was done in the UK, a 3-year study on Navy SEALs, of all things. And I know a bunch of Navy SEALs, partly because there's an organization about restoring Navy SEALs back to the truth of who they are as people, as human beings, because they have the highest suicide rate in the military as far as any sector per capita, and and the kinds of things they do is incredibly dehumanizing. They have to dehumanize the other, and then they have to compartmentalize in such a way that they can do the things that they do. This 3-year study and they're known, because of 900 applicants, they'll end up with 25, and of those 25, only a couple will be ultimately invited into a SEAL team.
Wow.
And these guys are dubbed highly resilient people. And so this 3-year study done by universities in the UK was going like, so what are the essential qualities of a highly resilient human being? And they found five qualities. And it was interesting. They didn't learn it in training. They came into it with these. They had learned it other places, right? All 5. So it had nothing to do with tactics, had nothing to do with arms, nothing to do with, weaponry or skills in infiltration and all that. It had nothing to do with those things. So the five characteristics, and I've got them somewhere, but let me just see if I can do it. The number one characteristic of a highly resilient person is that they only operate in the present tense.
Wow.
That's number one.
That's powerful.
Wow.
Well, let's unpack it a little bit, because fear never allows you to stay in the present tense. Right?
Yeah.
Fear always drives you away from what's actually in front of you. And the most, I was thinking the other day, because I was watching something And I was thinking, like, so what's the difference between the imagination that it takes to engage, say, with a television show or a science fiction book or something, right? And our imagination that creates scenarios, and I call it future tripping, right? Creating scenarios that don't exist, but our bodies respond to them as if they do. And I was thinking, like, so what's the difference? Well, we sort of have an internal narrator, right? So when we're watching a TV show, our internal narrator is going like, this is not actually real, right? And so you can disconnect. You can engage with it, but when it's all done, you go like, wow, that was an incredible story, or it was a horrible story, or whatever, but it's not real. And it does have the power to have lingering impact, let me tell you. Because our neurology doesn't know when it's communicating to our body the difference between what we're engaged with in terms of imagination and what's actually in front of us, right? And but when we future trip, our internal narrator is the one who's future tripping. And so we don't disengage. We don't step away from it. And I'm talking about simple things like, well, I'm going to say this to that person and they're going to say this to me, and then I'm going to react this way and we're never going to talk again. So why even talk to them now? Right? Or how many of us have ended up absolutely broke and living in a cardboard box under Burnside Bridge, right? In our imaginations, so we're constant, everything this year. If the pandemic didn't do anything else, it was a constant invitation to future trip.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
All it takes is a phone call, or all it takes is a positive test, or all it takes is somebody tell you that you need to put your mask above your nose and not under your nose, and I mean, you're future tripping. You're into revenge fantasies. You're into, end of the world scenarios. You're into conspiracy theories. You're in every, and all of it is saying, you know what? Somebody's got to get control. Right? So I think that the work we're called to is the work to stay in the present tense. And I was thinking that before I heard anything about the Navy SEALs. So when they said the number one quality is that they always stay in the present tense, I'm like, okay, that agrees with already what I'm thinking is actually true. And you see this all over Scripture. Take no thought about tomorrow. Paul, don't you have a calendar? Yeah, and look what happened to it. Yes, I have a calendar. It was a presumption about how the year was going to go. And it got obliterated by this little tiny virus,
Yeah.
And so, how much do I clutch that as a sense of control? Well, I let it go because what? I have this calendar. I had a calendar that said, oh, I'm going to be with you two this morning. Hey, some cell could have gone sideways in my brain and I wouldn't be here, right? Or some phone call and I wouldn't be here. So calendars don't give us control. It's kind of a presumption, and we've got to hold them very loosely. Even Jesus, like, well, if you say you're going to go to this city and you're going to buy this business and you're going to do this, or that, say, if I'm alive, and God wills.
Yes, if it be God's will.
And I'm alive. It says, and I'm alive.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a big deal, as far as, meeting the expectations of a calendar. So everything about fear drives you out of the present tense. So what are the things, everything that's real is in the present tense. Grace. You don't get grace today for things that don't exist.
That's true.
Okay. Peace is always present tense. Joy, in the presence is fullness of joy, right? So joy is always present tense. And we rarely stay present. So we think joy leaves, right? Joy never leaves. If Jesus dwells within you, if you are inextricably in union with the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, so that you don't even exist apart from that relationship, then joy never left. Then why don't I experience? Because you're in some future tripping imagination where all hell's breaking loose and everything's going wrong and nobody loves you and you're not enough and there isn't enough and all the lies are telling you, right? Fear always drives you out of the present tense.
Or you can be in the past too.
Well,
linger, meditating on all the terrible things that have happened, or an argument you had with someone 10 years ago, and you're still living in that reality. You're living in the reality of the past.
Let's talk about the difference between that. We don't actually, all biography is fiction, right? So Jesus is not going to actually take you into the past and change it. What Jesus is going to do is take you into your perception of the past and change how you see it.
Yes.
So, because a lot of us, the way we see it, and we've got to deal with our past. That's different than future tripping, because there are things that happen to us, and we would like to not deal with that, because we'd like to quote the verse that says, old things have passed away, everything have become new. So I don't have to deal with the fact that my dad beat the crap out of me growing up, or that, that it had a ripple effect in terms of how I relate to people or how I hide, or we got to do that kind of work too. So, but a couple of weeks ago, I woke up in the middle of the night because I was having these leg cramps and they were kind of awful. So I have to go out and make this kind of sodium drink thing. It's actually the little cubes that you make bouillon.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I can get hot water and mix one of those and start drinking it, and immediately my cramps stop. Nice. I have no idea why, but so I'm up at 3:00 in the morning, and suddenly I get absolutely inundated by accusations based on my past. Where they just start showing up, and it was like I'm caught in a flood of these, accusations that I know. Because I hurt a lot of people and I made a lot of mistakes, and so I don't get swept away the way that I used to, which is evidence that there's been a healing journey in my life. But I'm caught in this thing, and I turn and I'm inside and I'm having this conversation with Jesus, and I'm going like, is this about me or is this about somebody else? Because sometimes you get to participate in the brokenness of the world in these situations. It's not always about you, right?
Right.
And so it's like, so in that situation, if it's not about me, who comes to mind? Who do I need to be praying for, or what's going on? And I'm going like, how do I deal with this? Because nobody came to mind. It seemed to be my crap, And I said, help me with this. How do I address these accusations? And immediately I said to the accusations, if you've got nothing to teach me, you've got nothing to tell me.
Wow. Yeah.
And it obliterated the accusation. Right? So when you deal with the past, it's like, if you've got something to teach me, I'm all ears, because I want to understand. Right? I want to understand why I function the way that I do, why I set up the kinds of blocks and relationships the way that I do, why I shade the truth, or attempted to shade the truth. And because I know why that particular one, because lying was a survival skill when I was growing up. It wasn't trying to deceive anybody. It was trying to find a way to stay safe. And so whenever I know that in me, that when I feel the temptation to shade the truth, I know I'm afraid of not being safe in the moment. Right? And so if you've got something to teach me, great, I'm all ears. But if you got nothing to teach me, you got nothing to tell me. And that's, to me, the difference between shame, which is always an attack against the truth of who you are, right? So guilt is I've done something wrong, and shame is I am something wrong, right? So it's like there are things about my history and my past that the Holy Spirit will bring up. I don't need to go looking for stuff, because you start going and unpeeling the onion. But going back to the Navy SEAL guys, one of the things that this organization does is they do what's called a 5-day drop zone. It's Operation Restored Warrior. And they go back into their history and into their perception of their past with Jesus. And they go to look to find, and these are guys that aren't followers of Jesus. Lots of them aren't. But they've had a gun to their mouth, or they've got, they've been in absolute crisis. And so they're desperate enough to tell the truth. Right. And so that's different than future tripping. Future tripping is the incarnation of our fear in such a way that it sweeps us away from the present.
Yeah.
And so take no thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow's got enough issues of its own. Sufficient to the day is the grace thereof. Take captive every empty imagination that raises itself up against the knowing of God. And my verse for 2020, I got a verse for 2020. That's like the first time in decades that Trinity has given me a verse, because I think I have overheard them going like, so we should give Paul a verse this year. No, he gets too triggered. He's a missionary kid and a preacher's kid. It's like, But this year I got a verse right at the beginning of the year. And it was Hebrews 3:13, and it goes like this. Encourage, add courage, which is based on the Latin and the French, heart, cura. Enlarge the heart of one another as long as it's about today, so that you are not swept away by the deceitfulness of brokenness.
Wow.
Right? And that has become so powerful. And in the book of Hebrews, in the epistle to the Hebrews, the word today in New American Standard is all in caps because the Greek's emphatic. It's like, as long as it's about today, don't be encouraging each other about things that don't exist. As long as it's about today. So a year ago, I was in Eastern Oregon, and I was invited by a group of my age people, older folks. And there's kind of a big retirement resort community in Sun River, and so I get invited over to Sun River, and for a talk about the shack. And the big part of the session is question and response time, which I love. I love it because there's no control, right? You could be asked anything, and I don't do Q&A because I don't have all the answers. So because I'm Canadian, and
Hey.
and hey, I'm Canadian, eh? So CANADA, that's how you spell Canada. And
I hadn't heard that one before. I like it. I like it.
I like it too. One of God's frozen people, and so during one of the first questions I get is from an older guy in the back row, and he goes like, "So, there's this Irish proverb I'd like you to comment about." Okay, sure, why not? And he goes, it goes like this. When you die, the only thing that will have mattered is if you had impact or influence, He says, what do you think about that? And one of the reasons that I love Q&R is because sometimes you get to say things you've never thought of before, or aren't thinking about in the moment.
Yeah.
And all of us, I have not met a human being who's not had an experience where they've been talking to somebody or in a conversation where out of their own mouth has come something that is utterly profound that they've never thought of before.
Yes.
And in that moment, you're thinking, that person right now thinks I'm like the most brilliant person on the planet. And frankly, I need to write this down because I've never heard this before. So he asked this question, and out of my mouth comes this. I've never heard a child say anything like that. I guess you have to become an adult to say something like that. Children assume presence is impact. And it comes out of my mouth, And I can see the ripple. Just, it's kind of like Jesus saying, so who do you guys think that I am? And Peter going like, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, and Jesus laughs. He goes like, Peter, flesh and blood didn't tell you that. Your mind didn't come up with that.
Yeah.
Like you're participating whether you know it or not. Because, 3 or 4 verses later, Peter is now like, did you hear what I said? Come on. Like, I'm really good. And like 3 or 4 verses later, Jesus says, I have to go to Jerusalem. And Peter goes like, no, I don't think you should go to Jerusalem. And Jesus goes, get behind me, Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Like it only takes a couple verses before Peter's back to his ways of control. And because what is Peter doing? He's future tripping. You go to Jerusalem, they're going to kill you. If they kill you, they might kill me, So he's already down the road and not present at that moment. And so Jesus brings him back to the presence. But again, it's like being presence is impact. My grandbabies, when they come over and I see them, they're not thinking like, oh, so how am I going to get Grandpa to love me? They have no agenda. They just think, I'm here.
Mm.
This is what we've been waiting for, right? For me to show up. I'm like here. And so what are we doing? Let's do it again. And everything is about the present tense until a child has to begin to create survival skills to stay alive in one sort or another, either emotionally or psychologically or physically even. And so then they become future trippers. Otherwise everything's present tense. And that's partly what it means to be a child. And it's like, do the work of staying present. Be here.
Yeah. Well, and the mind has so much power over the brain. And there is a difference between the mind and the brain. And so if in my mind, I'm creating this reality that doesn't even exist. And let's say it's full of anxiety and angst and fear, my brain, it's going to send signals to my brain. And then now my brain is going to start telling my body, well, you need to release the cortisol and adrenaline, and you need to get into the sympathetic nervous system. You need to, and all of this, of course, happens subconsciously. But we can think about that. If I start thinking, give it 2 minutes of what could be or what if, and I start breaking out in sweat, or I start, my breath starts getting more shallow. I've already created a reality in my body, in this biological being that's not even there yet. And it's like, stop right now. And part of even overcoming a traumatic event, like in the moment, is sitting yourself down in a chair, feeling grounded, feeling supported in your back, and then looking around going, I am here. And just actually being grounded to the earth, to where you're sitting, taking some deep breaths. And that's like when, something traumatic does happen in the moment, how to come back to present. But we can do that even if something hasn't happened externally to us. We can create a traumatic event in our mind. And now we're 2 minutes later, we're in this triggered state of anxiety or fear, and our body's responding because that's what our bodies are created to do. And I think we're doing this, I think, gosh, all the time. I'm trying not to. I've come out of really a battle with fear for a long, long time. And like you're saying, fear is not based in reality. It's what could be, what might happen. And so reminding myself, part of meditation is I am in the moment right now. I'm not somewhere else. And learning how to observe those thoughts and then release them, instead of, I'm going to catch one of those thoughts and then sit with it and look at it and then feel it, but letting it go. And that actually takes a lot of practice.
Well, the thing that's going on right now is that you can't get away from it, because everywhere you look, you see reminders of what's going on, like
invitations.
Yes,
to fear.
Exactly. Whether it be through the news media, whether it be just seeing people wearing masks, whether it be the signs everywhere you go about social distancing. It's like there is a barrage of input that really does invite us to go to worst case scenario or what if, what could, and all of that. That's what's been really difficult about this past year. And we're actually going to air this right in January. So 2020 has turned to 2021 at this point by the time people listen, but it's still a reality. It's not like the calendar changes and everything is magically okay. But it's hard. And especially if you're feeding yourself constantly on news and all of that, they are invitations.
Well, not just news. Everything about advertising is to get you the future trip.
That's
everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you become discontent with what is actually in front of you based on the promise of what would life be like if I had that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the way the world functions is all fear-based. What's the opposite of fear? Love. And we even know that in the brain, you can't have fear and love at the same time. They can't coexist.
Right.
And fear is not something real. Love is. Fear is the absence of love. So there has to be a whisper in the heart that says, you're all alone. Nobody has your back. There's not enough, right? The whole scarcity thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be found out that you don't have what it takes, right? All the lies that are fundamental whispers that a lot of us experience. And so, we're surrounded by invitations to not be present.
Mm-hmm.
And if in the presence there is fullness of joy, and if there is no fear in love, 1 John, then the presence of fear can help us understand to what degree we don't know yet how much we're loved. Right?
Yeah.
So the one who fears is not perfected in love. That's not an accusation, it's an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so, what the fight and flight and freeze and fawn and fake, the 5 F's that are responses to fear, right? Flight, we just run, we just leave, whether we compartmentalize or just exit the conversation or whatever we do. The freeze, that was one of my big survival mechanisms. I just shut down completely.
Mm-hmm.
I dropped into the black hole, and then there's the fawn, where you're trying to say something to make the person love you again, or you're right. And so flight, freeze, fawn,
fake,
fake. Yeah. Fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and it's just like mask ourselves over or go on the attack, make the other person the problem or whatever. Right. And all because we've lost our sense of being loved. How many times in scripture where God shows up and goes like, first thing, fear not.
Yeah.
Second thing, I am with you.
Yep.
Like right here, right now. And everything about it. When you have those future tripping, fear-based imaginations, nobody's with you. I don't know if you've been to your own funeral, but I have. I've been to my own a bunch of times. Nobody cried, and I was pissed off about it. And it's like I cried, but again, it's just this imagination, or like you get the pink slip, and all of a sudden, for some of us, we have come through such a fragile history that when failure shows up, we become self-destructive in one form or another. And so I think this thing about staying in the present tense is really, really, really important. And that's the work. The work is to stay present. That's where all the action happens. This is the real world. This conversation, my whole life, and everything that was involved in my whole life has led up to this conversation on this computer today. Because I could walk out here and some brain aneurysm happens and I'm done. This was the culmination of my life right here, right? So why would I want to be anywhere else? especially in some imagination that doesn't exist. And so everything that is real is happening in this conversation. And I think that's why being a child is so important, that we are children of God.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends.
And please stay tuned for more great content coming your way.